episode is brought to you by Self-Care for Diabetes, a virtual online program that's doing diabetes care differently.
We don't tell you to lose weight. Instead, we help you create positive and meaningful changes that make your life with diabetes better than before. Visit selfcareforddiabetes.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Body Kindness Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Scritchfield, and I'm here to help you find your inner caregiver. You'll have more compassion, less shame, and the tools you need to deal with a culture that just does not want you to be free to give yourself fierce love. You are welcome and you belong in our community, where we value your well-being, we share our experiences and support each other on the body kindness journey, and we know that your health and your worth is not dependent on your weight. If you would like to enjoy self-care, be less self-critical, and make your life about more than your health routines, join us at bodykindnessbook.com/start. Hey listeners, it's Rebecca. Before we get into today's episode, which is a very powerful conversation with Bernie, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up about the content. And so as you know, Bernie and I took a pretty long break during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we felt so fortunate to be able to find some time to reconnect. It was the very end of 2021, and we were able to have a couple conversations. And honestly, there was no agenda. I just kind of hit record on the mic and see what Bernie was bringing to me. You know, he and I have been friends for a while, and we've been through a lot. And as you've come to know Bernie, and if you've been listening for a while, he's like an open book and felt willing to share, and really is just open and curious and honest about how he's feeling, which has been this feeling of not feeling, kind of like describing it as numbness. So that was opened up in our first reconnection episode, which if you haven't listened to it, it's a great listen. You can kind of go back and then come back to this one if you'd like. And this is the second in a group of 3. And we just expand with more insight about how numbness has shown up for him differently at different times in his life. He re-discloses a childhood trauma. He doesn't go into any detail about it. The focus is not on his trauma at all, but it's really just a naming and acknowledgement that he recognizes and validates that, you know, that pains from his past are showing up in different ways now that he is a parent. And that's going to come out more and more in this episode and in the next episode. So we are so grateful to have you as a listener, and we really hope you find a sense of connection to us and to our common humanity in listening to these conversations. And Bernie and I will be back together with more episodes in connection throughout 2022. So thank you so much for listening, and hope you enjoy. Hi, Bernie.
Hey, Becca. Nice to be back on Body Kindness.
I know. I'm so grateful that we have a chance to reconnect. And I know when we were kind of scrambling to find some time to get together, we just had a chance to talk about how exhausted and overwhelmed we felt, really. And, you know, hoping that we weren't alone and that there are listeners who can relate and who find a sense of connection and validation in our conversations. And I was hoping that we could start today talking about a word that you used actually on several shows. But, you know, most recently on the last chat, you would talk about kind of feeling a variety of emotions, but eventually get to this feeling of numb or numbness. And so I just, you know, want to have some, you know, space where we can listen and connect to each other around, you know, kind of what's going on with you and how I can help. You can feel free to ask me questions or just share what's going on in your world.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. You know, I don't know, you know, it's been a while since I brought this feeling up for new listeners, this is something that I experienced post Biggest Loser. And for those listeners that have been with us the whole time, I definitely am feeling this sense of numbness again. And, this is around both good and bad things. After our last conversation, I have given it some thought, and I just feel like it's my defense mechanism, how I cope with things, right? A lot of people, will get extremely sad and down, and I understand that. I have people like that in my family, and that's very serious. And we have people that are also will ride the wave up when really good things happen. And for me, it's always been the way I deal with things is just kind of staying, just numb. So
Kind of
whether
like,
it be
is it
a
like
good or bad
disengaged?
thing, it's it is, but it's an awareness of what's going on around me. So it's not disengaged where I refuse to see what's happening, or where I'm unaware of how I should be affected by an event.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense. I'm like, oh, I should feel this way,
Mm-hmm.
or this, it's not even should, right? Like this event normally might trigger this in someone's feelings. I reach a point where I'm just numb. It's the weirdest.
Mm-hmm.
It's the weirdest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've listened to some of our past discussions, I mean, there's definite trauma and
Mm-hmm.
things that I'm dealing and coping with, whether it be, being abused as a child, or, my experience using food to cope. We all come with different backgrounds and experiences, and they all play into how we deal with and navigate life. So, I mean, for me, I get this feeling of numbness. And these are difficult times, right? For our listeners, I mean, you guys can relate. I don't have to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
We're all navigating something that is new to everyone, including our parents and grandparents, right? We can't even go to to them for guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all figuring out how to make that happen, how to live with this new normal, both live with ourselves, live with our partners, children. I mean, it's a lot to handle. And for me, unfortunately, like I find myself going back to this feeling of no ups or downs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
I
know?
mean, and all of the emotions that we feel in life as part of being human is, they're meant to be there. We are meant to feel a wide variety of emotions, and don't necessarily need to chase them away, or panic that we might never feel positive emotions again. In fact, we can often get into like an extreme, if you think about the helpfulness of that, when a part of you is worried about, like, why am I numb? Is it ever going to go away? And maybe some anxiety spills into that. If your mind will let you start to think that way, it's like, well, think of how helpful it is from that part that doesn't want, it's afraid, right? It's fear-based. Like it might be able to accept that some amount of, negative emotion, sadness, numbness is okay, but it's more worried about, well, I want you to be on the happier side. So like, when is that going to come back? So everything, it kind of has a function, in listening to you talk. I'm a bit curious, and again, like no diagnosis or anything. That's just more friend to friend. But I know we've talked about your trauma before, child physical abuse, and that is like, trauma is kind of always with us. I don't know if you've heard of dissociation before.
Vaguely, right? Like I think I know where you're going with it, but I'm not. I wouldn't know what to fill in on a test, Rebecca.
Got it. I mean, this is just like a basic WebMD article that's been medically reviewed by a doctor, And it says, most people daydream now and then. And if that happens to you, it's perfectly normal. But if you have a mental health problem called dissociation, your sense of disconnect from the world around you is often a lot more complicated than that. Dissociation is a break in how your mind handles information. You may feel disconnected from your thoughts, feelings, memories, and surroundings. It can affect your sense of identity and your perception of time. And anyway, and it's I work with clients with dissociation, and I recognize that there is a spectrum of it. So it's more feeling to me like something that's similar. But this article goes on to talk about symptoms, and that one of the like changes in the way you feel is like feel emotionally numb or detached. There's another one like feel little or no pain, feel like you're a different person sometimes. Anyway, to me, I don't really care at all about labels or anything like that. It's not about the label. It continues on to talk about causes of dissociation, trauma being there, childhood abuse being listed under one of the examples of traumas. And anyway, the reason why I even kind of bring it up and everything like that, it's not so much as that, I think this is dissociation, because I don't. But I do think that there's just when we need to sort of make sense of a situation, right? Like if we can radically accept and validate, like I am a person that has a trauma history, right? I am a person that feels a full spectrum of emotions. And like anyone, sometimes the feeling can feel too much, and my mind needs to make some kind of a shift. And it sounds like that in that shift as a coping mechanism, it is this sort of some type of disconnect or close offness that I know how productive you are, and you run businesses with your wife, you're running your own business, you're a parent of 2 amazing kids. So probably like me, in that you can actually function and look like you got your shit together, but inside it can feel like things are crumbling down, or like you need to take space from people without actually being able to take space. So, like I said, sometimes just this making sense of, so there's this thing out there, and, maybe this isn't quite it, but I can relate to this, because in that sort of, there's this little inner child that's kind of like, what's wrong with me? And am I going to be okay? And I think that little worried, panicked inner child, that if we can make sense of what's happening in life and understand it, and to know that it's part of how full, complete, unbroken humans go through life, that it's like we can start rising up this inner caregiver that just can hug and love on that inner child, says, I love you no matter what. I'm committed to you no matter what. We're going to get through this no matter what. I'm here. Like, let's go. What's up? And, ultimately you're back to true inner caregiving and true body kindness, and I don't give a crap if it's like, so I ate grapes today or I had a salad, that's great when we get there. Right. But true, the roots of body kindness, love, connect, care, make your choices from a place of love. And that very well could be, I'm not doing exercise, I'm going to do some breath work and some playtime with kids, connect to your body. Yeah, I'm thirsty. If you can feel that, great. Have it in a drink.
Yeah, I think for me, part of that numbness and what I'm, most, I don't want to say worried, but just, aware of is the connect aspect of it just isn't there, right? For me, I can't because of the numbness. Right. So, I'm not enjoying meals. I'm not getting anything out of any movement. Do
you say screw it a lot? Like even if a party,
but my screw it's very different. Yeah. So like my screw it isn't like screw it, I'm going to eat this or that or whatever, and again, when I say that, I'm not talking about bad foods. I'm just talking about so that's not my screw it anymore. Yeah. Like my screw it isn't like, let me go towards this or mindlessly overdo it.
Right. And wait, can I just ask before you talk about your screw it, just for those who might not have listened to everything, you said my screw it isn't that anymore. So there was a time in your life where food, either restriction or overeating, numbing with food was a
both
thing.
ways. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. It just isn't that anymore. I'm not in that mind space. So
right. But isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is. It is, right? But I almost feel like in my numbness, I've also lost my taste buds, right? So it's like, again, if you're, for those that have been listening to this episode, like good and bad, like if it's great, I'm like, if it's bad, I'm like, like I'll literally eat the same amount. And again, that's odd.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, let's
so I'm actually, you know what? I like talking about it in relation to food, because I think that makes sense, right? It makes sense to me. It would make sense to my kids, and hopefully it makes sense to our listeners.
Yeah.
So if it's good or bad, I'm still eating the same amount.
So I have a phrase that I use now with clients that I got from Emily Nagoski, who wrote "Come as You Are," and Burnout. She wrote Burnout with her twin sister. I'll share those links to all those podcasts in the show notes, as they're phenomenal. And she said, Rebecca, pleasure is the measure. And I was like, oh, I love that. But so there is, you can imagine that there's a lot of, in our society, if you're allowed, right, to get pleasure from food, or you might be working on that permission, that there is a strong positive association between tasting something that tastes great, the dopamine reward saying, ooh, this is nice, more please, and then kind of enjoying the experience, the taste of the food, enjoying the people around you, enjoying all there is to savor. And then through connect, right, connecting to your body to notice that sense of satisfaction and fullness, and not, again, people early in their experience coming off of chronic dieting, they'll kind of use intuitive eating, like the hunger fullness diet. Oh, perfectly comfortable full. I got to stop right here. It's like, no. You sometimes want to get like past comfortable and stuff, and and especially if the context, like just because you don't stop on a dime and controlling it that way. But, it sounds like part of what I'm hearing from you is there was a time where screw it, you would kind of numb or cope through restriction, right? And, even if someone has they're questioning, am I an emotional eater, or do I binge eat? One of the first things that I'll tell them is that whether or not it's diagnosable as a binge eating disorder or chaotic eating on the spectrum, eating that feels like a binge, it's a restrictive disorder. So it almost always is, you're eating very little, you're being very controlling, you're disconnecting from validating that you deserve pleasure with food and eating. And that restriction leads to these episodes of, biologically, the body is trying to maintain homeostasis, and, and then it's like, oh, see, I ate too much. This is why I can't have fill in the blank food. Well, it actually was more likely started by something else. So you've had a long history of that. And really it wasn't until, I think it was us doing body kindness work that really helped with that. Yeah. But interesting, right? The choice of coping, right? So you've learned enough of your brain. You've literally got the neurons that are like, oh, wait, that shit doesn't work. Now, maybe some of it is, because I can't feel the pleasure, I'm not going to choose this as coping. I'm not sure. But I really haven't had many people who said that they really tasted and enjoyed food when they were eating, when they were trying to control or numb things, right? But you did get to a point where eating was joyful and pleasurable. And now it's like, what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter. It could be Michelin star, whatever. I can't taste the shit.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you hit it on the head. And, there was a lot in there that you shared. For me, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate. Like, I am, and always have been, a caregiver. Like I care about people, and I'm happiest when I'm caring for people outside of myself, and we can lose ourselves in that. Right. And I think that given all that's happening in the world, we have been forced to care for others for nonstop for 2.5 years now. Right. So I think, us caregivers, run the risk of just burnout in general, right? Well, and 2.5 years of trying to care for others, or put others' needs first, and is downright exhausting, right? And we're all doing it in different ways. And when I say that, I do have 2 little ones at home, right? And then if you look at your job or a business, or as another child, right? Like something you have to take care of, you have to show up for. There's that, and then there's, of course, all that's going on with the extra amount of worry outside of yourself. Like, oh my gosh, like, are they going to get sick? Oh my gosh, they are sick. Oh my gosh, this is going on. So there's all those different things happening, and there's been no respite for us. So, I mean, I know it's off track. What I'm saying is, like, just in general, like, I almost feel like, I just feel like, why am I feeling numb? Well, it's because if we feel the amount of woe, whatever that is, that's going on in the world, like it's a bunch, like that's a bunch to deal with. And for me, I've always, for better for worse, part of my escape has always been, caring for others' needs. And I was to a point prior to this where I was aware that I needed to be meeting more of my needs, and I was starting to do that, right? Everything from nourishing myself to moving my body to connecting with people, like that was happening more. But the world hasn't allowed for those things, right? Like you can only connect even to the ones you love the most, like my kids. I could only connect to them for so much, for so long before you need to find other connections. And there's nothing wrong in saying that, but it's true. Like I have literally run out of things to talk about with my 2-year-old. Like my 6-year-old and I have had the same conversation over and over again. And that's just normal, right? When you have kids, they're going to ask the same question over and over again. But for me, I'm finding that my answers are shorter, or they're not as, detailed. And I have to remind myself in this that they're looking for some type of normalcy or growth, even in times where we are finding it hard to provide that for them. So there's all that worry that's pent up in there. And I think that, for me, it's like, okay, get through this day, do this, do that. I think a lot of us are doing that right now. So for me, again, it goes back to this, how can I stay numb to stay functional? Maybe that's it.
Right. Coping mechanism, right?
Yeah. If I don't feel any of this shit, I will still be able to get through my day. Right. And I don't know if my listeners can relate to that. Right. If I can get an amen, but I mean, we got to figure out how to find joy in these moments. Yeah.
But not
worry.
fake, but not, you're right. Find joy in the moments, not faking it.
I'm not saying that. Yeah. I mean,
I would say
that whole smile, in the mirror type thing. Like I get that, but sometimes I just want to punch the mirror. Like I'm not going to pretend that that's what it is.
Maybe punch a pillow, right? Maybe punch.
Yeah. Of course, I'm not going to punch a mirror, but you get what I'm saying? Like I've never been one to just like, let me look at myself and try to smile in the mirror a couple times. It doesn't feel genuine to me.
Yeah. There's so many things I want to mention. Well, one thing, it's with, there's like the typical childcare burden, right? And at least in the United States, right? There's just sort of, it's like there's a bridge you cross over, but you didn't know anything about what was on the other side of the bridge. There was no pre-book. There is nothing, right? And interestingly, because of how, we talk about like unpaid labor of caregiver work and emotional labor of caregiver work, and these, it's, tough to get minimum wage increase. And, there's literally so many factors that put, people who are caregivers, and it's not just your natural disposition to make sure everyone's happy. I got that too. It is literally I'm responsible for other people and until at least 18, maybe longer, but
Mm-hmm.
it can feel like a burden and like a very scary, overwhelming burden. COVID just really made that a nightmare. And, right in the early stages, I knew that it was going to be at least 18 months till a vaccine. And when the kids were first out of school, it was like 2 weeks out of school. And it was like one thing after another. And I talked to my friend, Soraya Chamali, who wrote Rage Becomes Her. And she actually is writing another book now on trauma, on collective trauma. And we were chatting early in the pandemic, and she said what's happening right now with a lot of people is anticipatory grief. And it's this idea of something bad's going to happen to me, my kids, to someone I love, and there's nothing I can do about it. So it was these overwhelming negative emotions, anxiety-based negative emotions that could just make you feel trapped, numb, exhausted. And so it's like, oh, here's crossing over that bridge to becoming a parent, right? With no resources. And they're like, oh crap, you're like in a video game or something, and then on top of that, oh, well, now we're going to throw the pandemic on you. And I think I'll raise my hand in this. Like when I could get my vaccine, I felt amazing. And then the booster. And I feel like we sort of had this summer of somewhat freedom. Maybe we could breathe. And then when Delta came, and then, okay, we got through Delta and then Omicron. And it's just, I just think that it is that aspect of the exhaustion. And I know, that there are people who have kids or other people in their lives who literally cannot get vaccinated. And that is awful because you would take a measure if you could, but you can't. And now we have how long you've had to endure this, that it's like, hey, like you said, I'm just going to be numb so I can live.
Yeah. I'm just like tuning out. It's so funny, right? Because, and not that like, I'm not a weed smoker. Like I'm, but I guess that would be like the equivalent. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Hey, if it works for you, it works. But I just, I don't want to take a chance with munchies, but I guess that would be kind of how that feeling might be. Maybe I'm imagining what it would be.
What's weird to me is going back to Emily and pleasure as a measure. I'm just like, maybe we all need to be having more orgasms then. Even if we're by ourselves, like not even if, easier for me. By myself.
That might be something to look into instead of, substances here.
That sort of numb feeling after that.
Yeah, just have more orgasms instead of. But for me too, it's like I don't feel like I'm enjoying. So my little guy, right, is he just turned 2, and like I'm not doing some of the stuff with him that I did with number 1. Now, can I attribute that to what's going on with COVID? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm also like wondering, is this just what number 2 gets? Like my poor little guy. Right. So like, I'm not doing, and these are all things that I enjoyed with my daughter, like, taking them to little music classes or doing things like that. These are all things that I never got. Right. Like, so of course, as a parent, at least for me, like I'm going to try to do things that I was never, exposed to and just really try to fill him with experiences. And I can't, right? Like I can't take him to go kick a ball around, on a little team or, so I'm trying to find things that bring joy, not just to him, but to me as a parent, right? Like I'm excited. I know what I was able to experience with my daughter, and I was hoping to be able to experience some of those with him. And it's just, I'm seeing the time flash, right? Like, cause he was born in October of 19, we went into, like lockdown in March of 20. So, 6 months into this kid's life, I call him my quarantine kid. Like he doesn't know what the world is outside of, it being half functioning.
I mean, are you worried? Is he going to be okay?
What do you mean? Oh, of course. I mean, as a parent, I'm always worried. Like yes. I mean, that's an easy one. Yeah.
An always worried parent is probably an anxious parent. So
yeah,
we might need to
yeah.
unpack
So
that.
yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know how to not be over the top on my response there. Like, yeah, of course. Like, that's my little guy. Like, she's my my kids are my world. So yeah, I'm always worried. And I'm always worried that, I can't, enrich their lives in the way that I would like to. Yeah, that's it.
I just wonder if there's some perfectionism going on. Like, and listen, I'm saying
no, that goes back to it. Listen, listen, we can go there, right? Like, I mean, gosh, we've been everywhere. Fuck, this is going to be one of those podcasts where the listener's going to be like, holy shit, he's lost it. And let me answer that for you. I have. And if you want to join the club, like, just, I'm here, we're going to get through it. But yeah, I've lost my shit. So let me go back to that whole, like, parenting thing. Like, we've already talked about my past trauma. There was some physical abuse there. I had a single parent who was amazing, but because she was busy providing for us, wasn't there much. My biological father was never around. So yeah, am I trying to fucking overcompensate with my children? Sure. Am I trying to get them experiences and show them love that I was never shown? Absolutely. Am I worried about them in a way that my biological father never worried about me? Fuck yeah. Yes, absolutely. Does that cause me a tremendous amount of anxiety that I, could potentially fuck this up? Yeah. So is it unhealthy? Am I doing too much for me? Yeah, that's what we're talking about right now. How do I deal with that? I go numb. So
see, you're
there we go. Full circle. Freaking solved. And cut.
And instead of go numb, go masturbate. Just kidding.
There you go. Well, we talked about that before. We talked about that before, but we've talked about that for, again, past listeners. Like masturbation for me was few and far between. Yeah. And that's rare for a guy, right?
Well, so everyone has different amounts of,
Listen, you're right. That's based on media and movies and all that. Yeah. But I mean, we tend to, men talk about it more than I've ever heard women talk about it, and again, we've had past episodes on this, but it was never something that I completely dove into. Yeah. I mean, sure. At this point, I'll try anything. Yeah. I'll let you know how that goes, Becca. We'll let the listeners go. But again, that numbness trickles into everything.
Yeah.
So it's not.
And that's our show. The podcast is made possible with support from listeners. Please donate to help offset production costs at gofundme.com/bodykindness. And please rate and review the show when you have a moment. It really matters. Let's keep the conversations going on Facebook. Search Body Kindness and request to join the group for Body Kindness readers and listeners. Have a question for us to answer on a future episode? Visit bodykindnessbook.com/question. Body Kindness books and audiobooks are available wherever books are sold. To request a signed print copy, visit bodykindnessbook.com/order. For other questions about this podcast, please email info@bodykindnessbook.com.